Our next speaker, Joe Borowy, has spent 12 years in water filtration, and he had a personal experience on kidney dialysis, and he has a whole journey through that brought him to where he is today. And after having a transplant, he's passionate about sharing natural actions, livings, protocols for getting clean water. Let's give a warm welcome to Joe Borowy. All right. And then coming up is Robert Scott Bell.
Sponsor lecture, and then I come up. So it might be an hour, Bob.
Hello.
Oh, you got it
I got
on?
a mic, yeah. So yeah, I ended up on dialysis. I'll get to that in a second. But my journey started when I read the book Natural Cures by Kevin Trudeau. I was just a regular person in a regular conventional medicine family, and that opened my world to all the kind of stuff you see at an event like this. But of all the stuff he talked about at that event, for whatever reason, in chapter 6, there's a section about drinking and showering in filtered water. And it just was one of those things that like instantly struck a chord with me, and I didn't know why. And in the years that followed, in addition to kind of getting into the whole holistic lifestyle, I started buying and testing a lot of different filter systems. And it was really interesting because some were better than others, and some would get the water to where chemically it was totally pure. Distillation, reverse osmosis with deionization. You can get every chemical contaminant that's traceable out of the water. But it still wasn't the same as like the best spring waters I would buy. Not like everyday grocery store stuff, but like premium stuff you'll find at certain parts of the country, like water from Mount Shasta, for example, or Sedona. And it just had this living quality about it that just energized me, and it just felt right. And the best filtration couldn't come close to that. So I was always looking for a way to bridge that gap. When I was on dialysis, my kidneys fell when I was 26, and I was about 2.5 years in when I got, and just because I wanted to try it, a natural action portable device. And I already had a good filter, so I just put my filtered water right through it, and it drastically increased my quality of life. When you're on dialysis, your energy levels are all over the place. You feel kind of a mental depletion a lot of the time. Just going to the grocery store, getting groceries, and coming home, I would feel exhausted. And it didn't like make my life amazing, but it generally raised my baseline a lot. I felt a lot better. My energy levels were a lot better. When I would have cramps after dialysis, when I used this device, they would go away a lot faster because the water would just assimilate more easily into my body. So I got really interested in it. I got in touch with the CEO because I had a background in filtration. And this was a little outside the world of filtration, so I wanted to learn more about it. And we became friends. And then after I got a kidney transplant, I ended up starting to work here, and I learned a lot more about water. So what is that gap between like the best filtered water and then what you can get in some of the world's like most pristine spring waters? What is it about it that makes that energize you at such a more fundamental level? Some people I know only will drink spring water for that reason. So there's a guy named Victor Schauberger that was a forester in Austria in the early 20th century, and he's no longer around, but one of his contemporaries is named Andreas Schultz, and he wrote a book called Water Crystals. And it's a really interesting book. Has anybody ever seen the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto? Okay. So this is interesting in that it's similar, but it's different. Emoto was having people put intention into water and then freezing crystals and having them look at that water crystal. This was different in that Schultz was just looking at the way water as it was in various sources around the world. And it's really cool. And it wasn't ice. Schultz's method was a slow distillation, basically, not boiling, just a slow evaporation, mixing that evaporate back with the mineral residue in a certain proportion so you get a clear image. And no matter where he was in the world, this is one example, but dead water coming from taps always exhibited in these crystallization analysis right-angle patterns. Really interesting, no matter where he was in the world. And these patterns were always right angles and were generally associated in other organisms that he tested on this type of method or any kind of samples from living things. In degenerative states, these patterns would manifest. And that's a Same kind of analysis, that crystallization from a cancer patient, that's a blood droplet, and you can see those same right angle patterns manifesting. And it wasn't just this, it was a lot of organisms and a lot of samples. You would see this dominant. And this is what living water looks like. This is why the best distilled or reverse osmosis or ultra pure lab grade water you could get, it does not have these qualities. This is bottled water from Australia, spring waters. That one from the Canary Islands it's the cover of the book. I mean, it's one of the coolest crystals out there, and that's it's considered one of the best spring waters in the world. But you can see that's holy water from, I hope my pronunciation's not right, but it's Chartres, France. It's like a holy water from a cathedral in France. Also, the Ganges River in India, Lourdes, which is a sacred site in France, also had demonstrated these complex crystallizations. And the Ganges especially, I mean, that is one of the most contaminated water sources in the world. There is every kind of contaminant in that water, including a lot of human fecal matter. And because that's considered a sacred part of the world, or whatever the reason, people drink from that water and they survive. But it has a very strong living quality about it. So it tells you that the chemistry and the living water qualities don't always correlate. So this is Andreas Schultz, the guy who wrote that book. He's the contemporary of Victor Schauberger. And this is the German tap water that was the control when he tested our most inexpensive, most basic device. We have them out there. It's the one I got when I was on dialysis, our most basic handheld portable device. And that's the same water with just one pass to the device. It completely changed to the quality of like the best spring waters. And that's the gap that I could never fill in the filtration space. Why was water, even from the best filters, when I drank like a liter of it at one time, it would just kind of bloat me and sit in my stomach and take a long time. But this was the difference. He had a way of kind of graphing or quantifying this living water aspect. And that's a more zoomed out version of the same sample from us. But 60-degree angles were always dominant in the best waters, spring waters around the world, that snowflake hexagon formation. You don't really see any 90-degree angles anymore. And if you read, this is a snippet from his actual report for us, but he says that water in this state, there are hardly any 90-degree angular structures in this crystallization, and it can be assumed that the harmful substances contained in this sample were completely neutralized. So that's what Schauberger said, and that's what Schultz said, that when the water is in its pristine state, even if there is bad stuff in the water, it doesn't affect you. We don't know the limits of that. Like, we don't know if you take, nuclear waste or something, does that still apply? But in normal conditions, we think this is true. And we know it from people that buy our whole house units. When they put it on their house, it's not a filter, and it's not physically removing the chlorine, but it's spooky because you cannot smell it or taste it, or you will think it's gone. In the showers especially, the showers feel like spring water. It's really, really interesting. So that's what I think drastically improved my quality of life on the last 2 years of dialysis. And I'm so thankful I found it, because it's hard when you're in that state. I mean, we have a lot of customers that are cancer patients or are dealing with some other struggling condition. It's not going to cure whatever you're dealing with, but it's going to mitigate your condition by helping your body work better. Some people get an initial detox period when they start using our devices. That's not for everyone, but it happens. And but that's because our water is so much more soluble. Any supplement you're doing, I took some like Chinese herbs when I was on dialysis. It makes them work better. A lot of times you can take less of them. Now, I'm taking a gross handful of drugs every morning because I have a kidney transplant, but I have to take them. I mean, I haven't really had any side effects from the drugs, except in the beginning when I was on a bunch of them, including like steroids and stuff. So it'll mitigate any challenges you're dealing with, and anything you're doing to help your body, supplement-wise or exercise or anything like that, it's going to enhance it, because hydration is the foundation of everything. So I'm happy to say that so I got my transplant in May 2020. So in May this year, it'll be 2 years since my transplant. And I tell the story sometimes, and people say, well, it's COVID, and everyone's wearing masks, and, the people aren't going out. No, I've been doing a lot of events like this and shaking hands with hundreds and hundreds of people. I haven't gotten COVID, but not only that, in 2 years, while I'm taking drugs that suppress my immune system, and theoretically I should be getting sick a lot more frequently, I haven't caught even a single cold. So the water works. So, and my time's up, but it was nice to be with you guys, and thanks for listening to my story. Our booth is right outside if you want to come talk to me. Thank you.